right, guys, we are back in the same file that we were working on in our last video. So we're back in Premiere, and in the previous video, we sort of talked about how to cut up different video segments and reorder them using the various video layers that are present in Premiere and moving throughout these sort of 4 quadrants that you have to work with. Today, we're going to talk about the different effects and properties that you can sort of add onto your files, and also how to handle things like transitions and different effects and animations like that. So I'm going to end up pulling out this panel that we sort of condensed last time so that it's a little bit more viewable and usable for me. And this file, I haven't done anything to it since I was last in it except lengthen the clip of this dandelion. So it's a little bit slower and it has a little bit longer of a duration. Beyond that, it's exactly the same with where we left it. So first thing we're going to go over is how to do a few different effects, like zooming in on things, cropping things, etc. And just in general, talk about the effects panel and some of its capabilities. So I am going to select our little clip here. I'm also going to zoom in on this sort of section a lot more. Double click on this clip that we're wanting to edit so that it will pop up under our effects. And the first thing I'm going to want to do is look at the very top of this panel here. You can see the source video that we're pulling from. You can see the current duration of that clip itself. You can also see the effect controls here, and that's mostly what I'm interested in talking about today. If you can't see this for whatever reason, most frequent cause would be if your panel is really condensed, but if you can't see it otherwise, there should always be this little double caret menu over here that you can click on and just select your effect controls. Really simple there. So you can see from this panel here, we have a couple of different settings. The second that you open up these menus, it's going to be maybe a little bit overwhelming with some of the options that you have here. So we'll kind of break it down one by one as we go. These are all the things that you can edit with your effects over on the left, and then over on the right here is just going to be the duration of our clip with another separate sort of bar that we can use to get to different stages of this video. So you can scrub through it here, and again, similar to all the other windows, there are ways to zoom in so you get down to the exact frame count or zoom out of that clip that you've selected. So first thing we're going to do is open up our motion panel. And there's 2 sort of ways to think about this. So motion, you can animate these effects, or you can use motion just to move the video around itself, but not animate it. So in what scenario might you want to move your video around but not animate it? You have your scale factor right here. Maybe you just want to zoom in on the video itself and you don't want that zoom to be animated. We're just going to zoom in on the whole clip. That would work perfectly well for scale. I'm just going to reset that value back to 100, but you could also animate that zoom in. So those are 2 options on how to treat that. Same thing here with position. Maybe I want to move this over. It's on a black screen anyway, so that'll work just fine. I can do that. I could also animate that moving. So there's different ways to handle all of those. Over here, down one more menu, you have opacity. This is quite simple. Opacity is how opaque something is, so how see-through or not. If something is at 100% opacity, it is going to be fully visible. As I decrease this number, my video itself will become more and more transparent. So that also means if I were to take this and reduce the opacity, I could then lay another video. We'll reorder this a little bit. Bring this down on a layer and bring this up top. And now as I play through this video, scrambled. As I play through this video, you would be able to start to see the other one through it. You'll also notice you have blend modes here, just like in Photoshop, so I could change around, assuming I'm on the correct layer, I could change around how this is behaving underneath, depending on the blend mode that I have. So as this layer starts to come into play and the opacity becomes relevant, now that will change blend modes. Pretty fun. So you can test those out as you move through things. And it's also easy enough to just reset it back to normal. Back into my menu here. And then under here, we're going to have time remapping. This is, again, how you can also speed up or slow down a video. I have changed the speed of this video, not through this option here, but by control clicking on this and going to speed duration, which we talked about in last video. So you could also do your speed change here if you would like. And that also means that you can change it over time. So the other thing you might be noticing as we're navigating through this window with so many options is that all of these options also have a little stopwatch icon next to it. If you see that stopwatch icon, that means that something can be animated or can be changed over time. So we can do a couple things here. So say I want this video clip to zoom in over a period of time. I'm going to reset my opacity value here so we're back to normal. So I can select any point in the video. I will go, if I want this to zoom in over time, I will toggle this stopwatch on, and it's going to place this little diamond down, which is going to be called a keyframe. And that is the way to think about it, is the first step of your animation process. So it's going to start out right here at 100% zoom. Anything before this is going to also be that same value. Maybe I want it to zoom in over the course of the full video. I can certainly do that. I would just go to the very last bit of the video by dragging my little cursor over, and I can increase whatever I want that scale to be to. So we're basically traveling from point A here, which is 100%, to point B, which is 180, or whatever I ended up setting it to. And so that means all of these steps in between here are going to slowly increase to that value. So we'll see it actually numerically start to go up, starting at 100, and you can look at that number changing and growing as I move my cursor over until it hits that final value. And as you play this clip, you'll start to see that happen as well. So that means every single one of these over here has the ability to be animated. It's really, really fun as a possibility. You can do a lot of things with it. I think it's great. So I would highly encourage you to play around with it a little bit. It is not a requirement of this assignment that you have to use effects in any way, but I think it's one of maybe the more fun things of Premiere and of video editing, seeing what you can layer and put together. And you have to sort of break into some of these if you want to do that. So as this starts to zoom in, I could also, and you can stack all these effects. So if I wanted it to get really confusing for you guys really quickly, I could now also start to change the opacity here. So I'll line up this cursor and I can make it line up exactly as we toggle that keyframe on here. And I could move down to my opacity. I could switch my stopwatch on, and I could have it start to shift in opacity as it zooms in over the same scale. So now you'll see those values start to change over time. It's becoming slowly, more or less opaque. And that's how that works. You can have as many of these little keyframes as you want to. So I'll delete my opacity ones really quickly. And I'll also delete my final one for zooming in. So we'll start here at 100. If I wanted it to zoom in and then zoom back out, I can totally do that. Or if I wanted it to zoom in up to a point and then stay that way for the rest of the video, that's what it's going to be. But if I wanted it to zoom in and then zoom back out over the course of that time, I could also still do that. So I know it starts at 100%. I brought it up to 186. I can drop it back to 100. And now over the course of that, we're zooming in now. And now we're going to slowly start zooming out. If I wanted it to be much quicker in the zoom out, I could do that too. So these keyframes you can click and drag around. So anything that is further apart for the keyframes is going to animate more slowly. Whereas if I drag these closer together, that animation is going to be much quicker. So we're zooming out and now really quick. And so I can just click and drag these around until I get to the effect I want. I can make it as quick as I want or as slow, and that's completely fine. Delete these. If you delete all of them, it's just going to innately return to 100. And if you don't want to animate an effect anymore, you can delete your keyframes and just toggle that off, and that's completely fine. So same thing here. If I wanted to have this entire clip zoom in a little bit more. And then if I wanted to at some point when this is encompassing a little bit more space, take this dandelion down at the bottom and open its effect controls and then change the scale of it so that it becomes present on the screen. Do a little bit of brief relayering. Oop. I can change all these things around. So it's currently set to multiply blend mode. I will change it back. I can have this start to play. And then I can also crop this video itself. So if I wanted my view to be way more like in on this instead, I can do that also. So we're just kind of stacking effects right now. And if it seems complicated, it's just because we're trying to show you as much as we can at the moment. But you don't have to stack all these effects in this complex way if you don't want to. We're just kind of messing around. So I'm going to crop this. And again, you can animate this if you want. So if I wanted this to, let's stack a bunch of effects just to make it really confusing. Why not? So I will start midway through. I will animate, toggle on crop left, top, right, and bottom, and then go a little bit more in, and we will start to take this in. Let's say, I actually maybe don't want to crop the top of it. You can also just type in values instead of struggling like I am right now. So this will animate over time. Logically, I should make this all equal so it's not frustrating to look at. So we will type in 20 on this just to show that that works just as well. That is going to change over time so you can animate that crop. And then this, if we reorder, will end up zipping back into place. Maybe I'll drag this guy over here, drag these over and around. And so now you have these sort of like stacked and layered video clips. Animated, cropping in, all that stuff. So we'll pause here. We also have the option again, as you can see, to change those blend modes, kind of fun. And you'll get that layered effect through all, or whatever colors are overlaid. So you can see what's kind of going on. Very fun effect to be playing with. And so again, that's just a kind of example of that animation. And I could keep then that crop effect after, but I could also, if I wanted to, from that point on, change the scale. So I will get to that exact point of the keyframe, and from here, if I wanted to make this clip encompass more of the screen, I could. What I might want to do first is end up putting down a keyframe at 100%, or it was at 60 first, maybe a keyframe at 60%, and then at the very end, we can bring a keyframe up to perhaps more. Play around with this scale. There we go. So multiple things being animated at different paces at different times, just to show you guys what that effect looks like. Shrinking and then going. And the one thing I do want to make sure is this is shrinking initially 60. So this cropping is kind of interfering with scale at first. So the one thing I do want to make sure is that it is cropped initially to that same size. Otherwise, it's going to do that shrinking and growing thing. I'm not going to belabor sitting there like that for you guys. So we'll just kind of keep that as it is. The other thing that you can do under effects, aside from these standard ones that we just demonstrated for animating, from position and scaling and rotation and all of that, you can also sort of explore the effects tab that's over on the right. So we have properties normally, which is what we're looking at, but effects over here, when you click on it on the right side, will also give you all of these different presets that you can pull from. So presets, really what I'm looking for is the Lumetri presets. So these are going to be different sort of color filters that you can pass things through. So say I wanted some part of this to be black and white, I would be able to do that. So I could go into monochrome, and they're going to have sample kind of images or previews, which is really nice of how all of these look. So if I think this monochrome punch is going to look nice, I will simply click and drag that onto the clip. And then you can sort of play it and test and see how it ends up looking. This video doesn't have much contrast, I suppose, in the color range of things, so something black and white might not necessarily be the best for it at this current stage, whereas this one would probably look decently nice in something black and white, nice and simplistic. There's also going to be other types of film stocks, so color film. These are really fun to play around with, or different cinematic presets. So you can preview those there. Nice way to sort of unify everything, but also if you're thinking thematically or conceptually, you could end up taking entirely modern footage and basically passing it through just a few color space filters and making it look like it was a black and white film from, like the 50s or 60s or something. There's going to be different audio effects and presets here that you can mess around with. Again, you're not required to have to use any of these, but I think they're really fun to play with. And then there's a couple other video effects here to talk about really briefly. These are some of my favorite ones. Just as with Photoshop filters, and I sometimes like to compare some of the video transitions present in Premiere, similar to like PowerPoint presentation transitions. Some of them can be really cheesy and corny really quickly, but if you know how to use them, they can also be used to pretty great effect. So I'm gonna go back to another one of our clips, and we will pick just one of these sections. So I'm going to select the clip that I want to put one of my funky or funkier filters on. I'm going to go to video effects here. And what I'm looking for is stylize, I believe. And I think I'm looking for mosaic. So I'm going to click and drag my mosaic filter over onto this. And then I want to go back to my effect controls over here. So the fun thing about all of these effects that are present on the right side is that you can also animate them over on your effect controls over in your top left panel. So after placing that mosaic filter on here, I'm gonna shrink this guy back down a little. Basically, it looks like it's passing it through one of those kind of like old-timey obscenity filters where everything's pixelated. I think it's silly, but it also can be used to like a really fun effect. So what I'm gonna end up doing is I'm gonna stop right at this frame here, and if I wanted to get like super precise down to the exact frame, I totally could. I'm going to, over in my mosaic, I added one too many of them, so I'm gonna delete the first one. I can choose how many blocks I have, so how many horizontal blocks or vertical blocks, so you can make it more, and you'll get a clear image like that, or if you make it less, you'll get much more blocky. If you want it to be perfect squares, I don't think you're ever going to get that, but you can make it even numbers and then you'll get those kind of like really chunky, neat effects. So what I'm going to do is go to this initial black in between frame between these. I'm going to do a couple different things. Sometimes when you're using these keyframes to animate in Premiere, I almost said After Effects because it's really similar to After Effects if anyone's ever touched that program. When you're animating stuff in Premiere with these keyframes, sometimes it's good to just take a moment and think about like what exactly you want to animate and what steps or like what points you're going to need to do it at. So for this first one, I'm going to toggle my stopwatch on and I'm going to set my values to 0, effectively like, actually, see, that's why it's good to think about. I'm going to, you can fully reset your values over here if you've messed up. Maybe the best way to do this is to actually split my video. So ignore what I'm doing. I'm just going to end up clearing this effect entirely. I want basically this to be a normal video, this to be under that mosaic filter, and then this to be a normal video again. So realistically, the best way to end up doing that is to just grab your video, zoom in. We're going to double click on this guy. And I'm just going to end up cutting it with the razor tool. So right here. And then right here. And then I will go back, double click on this guy, go to my effect controls, drag my mosaic filter back onto this specific clip, and then I can go ahead and animate this. So I'm going to start it out with, we'll start with more. Let's do a nice even 40. And then we will sort of hit midway-ish through this video, bring it back down so it's super blocky. And then I'm going to select these. You can just drag, click and drag a bounding box over keyframes, and you can copy paste them. And so I'm just going to kind of make like rising action, falling action type thing. So it will gradually get more and more pixelated and then go back. Or if you're not liking that effect, which is a little bit too fast for me, I'm going to just end up having it get more pixelated over the whole course of the video. And maybe we'll grab these two values and we'll start them off at a little lower. So we'll go from 20. And that's a little slower. So that's what we were looking for. So now we have that kind of in-between effect going on here. And you can also start an effect and then have it transition off over time with the same sort of way you would just amp the level or number that you're going to up as you progress. So long story short, a fun way to play around with stuff. The other filter people tend to really enjoy is going to be a noise or grain filter. So I'll pop that one over this last. So noise and grain, again, you just drag these on over, hit your effect controls. You'll also notice I can mess around with all of the like color presets for the filter that I added on here. And I can also animate noise over time. So I can, again, just change the value overall, and now you'll get that sort of like grainy film effect. You can choose whether you want it to be monochrome noise like this, or use color noise like so. Depends on what you like. Normally, if you're using a black and white film effect like this, I would keep your noise to be monochrome as well, but again, matter of taste. And same thing, if I'm just not clicking the stopwatch and adjusting this value, it'll change it for the whole video. Whereas if I were to drag this all the way back to the start and start it on like a really sort of light amount of noise, I can click that stopwatch on, and then maybe just add one more keyframe. You can add another keyframe of the same value just by hitting that little button there. And then maybe I'll amp it up to like some really crazy amount of noise as we go. So we can rewind through this just to see what that looks like. Still at that low 15% noise filter. And then from here, it's going to amp up and get a lot more chunky and grainy over time. Really fun. So again, just remember, you can think about this similarly to Photoshop, how all these layers work. You can also duplicate and take sections of this. So if I wanted we'll see if this works. In my mind, I think it works. If I were to copy paste this initial section of this peony, I could drag this on top. Oops, strong start. I'm going to click, copy, paste this in here. These should be the exact same clips. So I'm going to go in on this top one, effect controls, and I want like only a particular like teeny internal section to be pixelated of this. So the first thing I'm going to do is wait until the part. So maybe first thing I'll do is I will zoom in this a little bit. So I'm going to zoom in until 160. And I'll do the same thing on my other one, effect controls to 160 so they match. And what I want to do here on this top one is go back to effect controls. I want to crop it a little bit because I only want an intersection to end up being visible. So I'm going to crop the left. We'll crop the top. We'll do all the same value again, I guess, or see what that looks like for the moment. And then I think I'll end up bringing in more of the top and then more of the bottom. So we'll get those values in there, and I'll bring back my bottom layer. I was just hiding it so I could see what this crop actually ended up looking like. So I'll make it visible again. You can see that everything matches and looks normal. If I hit play, everything matches and looks normal. So perfect. And then I'm going to go on to this very top one, and I'll just go back to our stylized group, and I will grab the mosaic effect and pop it over. And then I can see how this mosaic effect is looking over time. So you can sort of layer stuff over like that and see how it behaves. And again, with this sort of scale effect, as this grows, I could also technically make that, I think, make that scale a little bit better. So we'll take the crop right and crop left. And over the course of this video, whoop, we can bring it out a little bit more and out a little bit more, and maybe even, no, we'll keep that. So yeah, you can just kind of mess around with effects until you get something that you end up liking. Referring to transitions on the syllabus, not syllabus, sorry, the rubric can mean two things. So I know it says on the rubric use of transitions. That could be taken to mean quite literally using video transitions in your project. But like I said, some of them can lean a little bit PowerPoint-y in a bad way. I'll show you what I mean. We'll pick, let's do barn doors. So I'm going to go take and drag this transition in between these two, and now I'll hit play. That's a pretty unsubtle transition, and you can use them to like very fun effect. You can make it a sort of like hokey, old-timey seeming movie or film. Those were very common in that, or like a very blatant scene change. But that might also not necessarily be to your taste. So you do not, even though it says on the rubric transitions, you do not have to use these literal transitions if you don't want to. I always take transitions just to mean how you are cutting and ordering your videos together. So right here, this sort of transition from stark black background to white is a choice in transition. Might be a good one or a bad one, but that ordering of clips there is a transition in my mind. So you don't necessarily need to employ things like page peels or page turns if you don't want to, because some of these can lean like that is super corny. So you don't have to use those sort of direct transitions if you don't want. If you do like them, that's totally fine. You can also, you'll just click and drag them in between. You can also animate those transitions if they're not quite doing what you'd like. The one thing I would suggest is also, let's see, some of these dissolves are great and some of them look a little, again, kind of like corny. So if we're thinking of a traditional fade, that could be a traditional fade. You can also animate a fade yourself by simply changing the opacity and animating the opacity over time under the effect controls. But say this is where I was at with my project and I was loving it. I wanted to keep it as is. I would highly suggest you check exactly how much time your video is taking up. So this is currently 1 minute and 16 seconds. So that definitely fulfills the requirements of this assignment. I would suggest just not going, if it reaches like 57 seconds, that's totally fine. 1 minute is great. It can go over 1 minute and that is okay. I just wouldn't push it into the like 45-second or 50 range and try to argue for that being 1 minute because it's not quite. So if you feel like you're ready to export, first thing you're going to do is you want to make sure that your window, your project window down here is the one that you have selected. Next, you're going to go up to File, and down all the way to export and then select media. And here's where you want to check your requirements for this assignment. So 1920 by 1080 output is exactly what we want. So if you're not seeing this number here, the kind of way you can get around it is you want to make sure that your preset here, you can set it to high quality 1080p, or if it's matching source, what basically it's going to match whatever videos you have uploaded. So if you were for some reason using 720p, it would export as 720p. So ideally we're not doing that. So let's go high quality 1080p HD, and the format you guys want to select is this H.264. You're going to want to make sure that you have both video and audio selected on, your effects if you're using any of them, and then you can just go ahead and hit export. This shouldn't take any longer than 1 minute, really, even if your computer is old or like not charging or running on low power. It should be really, really quick. If it's taking too long, let me know. Then there's probably something going on with your file. The other thing I really quickly want to point out also is that you can add text to your videos. It's going to work exactly the same way as like adding an effect, I would say. So I'm going to make sure I have a clip selected here. Go down to text. And then grab my type tool right here. And I can just, whoop. Ooh, this is being really fussy. Maybe let's just go back to effect controls and grab our text tool. There we go. So don't double click on something. It's just going to end up putting you into a rough spot. So select your text tool, select the clip that you want to add your text to. And then with your text tool active, you can just click and drag a text box over the top of it. And essentially what that's going to end up doing once you type in is you're going to get all these different options here. If you go over to properties, just like in Photoshop, you have the option to change your text out depending on whatever options you have or fonts that you have active on your computer at the time. So you can also search by font if you know certain ones that you like. You can change your scale of your font. You can change the weight of it here. Then you also, of course, have your center, different options. And then if you're into the more design side of things, you have your different options like tracking, which is line spacing, your leading, space between lines, and your kerning, which is space between letters. But it's going to function exactly the same way as any other sort of tool. And then what I can do with my text box is treat it like any old normal one, and I can just click and drag with my cursor over here to edit that, click and drag this to move it around. And this is basically going to plop a separate layer onto my sort of clip panel down here. So I can click and rearrange the duration of it, rearrange the positioning of it, make sure it's lining up with things in the way that I want. And then you can also, of course, go in and highlight things. You can change your color. You can change the stroke, which is just the outline around it. So you can see that I have a red outline. Objectively crazy. We'll pick a color that was actually already in the iris, I guess. You can pick a background color for the text, which is going to fill this entire box here with the background color, shadow, etc. So all of these are going to function really similarly to Photoshop. And now this is present. Same thing, if you double click on this, you do have effect controls for your type as well. So if I wanted to, over here, I could go ahead and animate some of those changes. So if I wanted the text size to increase after a certain point in the video, I could go ahead and do that. It scales really weirdly. So I personally, I would not animate it that way. But these are all changeable if you would like over time. And then same thing, you can change the positioning of this as well. So if I wanted to like have it be off screen, if I wanted to have it be off screen at a certain point, put that key marker on and then have it move all the way across over the course of that from point A to point B. I can do that. So once you start to realize how these keyframes work, you can really start to kind of animate anything. It's just getting that initial sort of push of knowledge through. So if you think you want to animate some effects for your video and are having trouble with it, just let me know and I'm more than happy to like record a little individual video just about keyframes for your specific situation and things like that. So again, just to refresh, once you're ready, select your bottom right panel down here, go up to File, Export. You'll want to go to Media. And then again, just make sure that you're selecting high quality 1080p so that this number over here on your output is that 1920 by 1080. And then you want to make sure you're selecting H.264, hit Export, and then you're good to go. The more effects you have, the longer that might take, but again, shouldn't take more than a minute. And if you're running into issues with that exporting, just let me know and I can help you out. We will be going over GIFs in our next video, so if you have any questions about Premiere stuff, just let me know so I can backtrack and make sure to address it in the next one. Bye, guys.